Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to go over the plot review from Mars Patel. So make sure as I'm going through, you may pause at different points, but make sure you're writing down all the information with your handout as you go through it. And that way you'll have it to review and prepare for your test. But today we're going to review over plot, character, setting, topic and theme, and conflict. This is a quote, words full of wisdom that someone important said and can make the reader get inspired by someone famous. Remember, plot is made up of the major events that take place during the story. Inciting incident would be the event that starts the story. The climax will be the highest point of conflict in the story. And our resolution is going to be the ending of the story, where the conflict is usually resolved. So our inciting incident for Mars Patel is where Mars discovers that his friend Aurora has mysteriously disappeared. And the climax is where Mars and his friends discover that Pruitt Prep is a spaceship. Then our resolution, how we find the solution at the ending of the story, is the spaceship known as Pruitt Prep is headed to Mars with all of the missing kids. Okay. The characters, we have major and minor characters, and then we have static and dynamic. Static is where the character does not change throughout the story, whereas dynamic is where they change extensively throughout the story. So, for example, our major characters are Mars Patel, Oliver Pruitt, and Caddy. Mars and Caddy are considered dynamic, where Oliver Pruitt is considered static. Our minor characters would be Toothpick, LP, Jonas, Mr. Q, and Aurora. We notice that Toothpick, LP, Jonas, and Aurora are all considered dynamic characters, whereas Mr. Q is considered static. And again, dynamic, they're changing, their mindsets change, they grow, they learn. Whereas static is they stay the same. Their characters don't really develop throughout the story. Setting, remember, is where we have the location, time period, and cultural context. And so with our information from Mars Patel, our location is anywhere in USA and H.G. Wells Middle School for the setting. The time period is present day. And the cultural context is where Mars is a middle school student who is required to comply with adult requests. This is required even when kids begin to disappear. Topic and theme is where a topic is the main subject of the story, whereas our theme is the author's message about the topic. So our topic is Mars has discovered that kids worldwide are mysteriously disappearing around the world. He discovers that Oliver Pruitt, Mr. Q, and Pruitt Prep are involved in the disappearances. Our theme of the story is heroism. Mars knew that kids were mysteriously disappearing. Although no one believed him, he continued to search for Aurora, Jonas, and the other kids. Conflict is the struggle between the protagonist and antagonist in the story. It can be internal or external. So for external, we have person versus person, nature, technology, society, or supernatural. Whereas our internal would be that person versus self conflict. So our two types of conflict that we see in Mars Patel is person versus person. So we have external. Mars discovers that Oliver Pruitt, the founder of Pruitt Prep, has kidnapped several kids worldwide for an experiment. Mars battles Pruitt throughout the podcast to rescue the other kids. Whereas our other external conflict happening in the story is person versus society. Mars continues to inform adults that kids are going missing, and they do not believe him. Some even work against him. Parents continue to send their kids to Pruitt Prep against his warnings. And then finally, foreshadowing and symbolism. Foreshadowing is where is when the author provides the reader with a hint about something that might happen in the story, or might happen later in the story, And symbolism is a concrete item or action from the story that represents another idea. So for in this story, our foreshadowing example would be during Mars's police car ride, the police officer called him a name that no one knew except for his mother. Mars knew that the police officer was involved in the disappearance of kids. And then a symbolism example, okay, it says, to the stars was a message that Aurora sent to Mars via text message. This message was symbolic for the trip to Mars that Oliver Pruitt was taking along with all the kidnapped kids. So that's just a review over the plot and all the main pieces that we need to know for Mars Patel Season 1.